Westfield Police Station, 11:43 p.m. Sergeant Ethan Cole ran a hand through his short, dark hair as he leaned over the dispatch desk. His shift was supposed to end an hour ago, but with the bizarre flood of 911 calls, he wasn't going anywhere. "This is Westfield PD, Lisa," the dispatcher spoke into the radio. "Please repeat your last message." Static crackled through the speakers. Then, a frantic voice cut in. "They're everywhere. My husband, oh God, he just bit me. Please, send hell." The line went dead. Ethan exchanged a look with Officer Mia Torres, the station's newest recruit. She was pale, gripping her notepad so tightly her knuckles turned white. "That's the third call like that tonight," she whispered. Frank Dawson, a veteran officer, scoffed. "Probably some drugged-up psychos. The world's gone to hell." Before Ethan could respond, a loud thud came from the main entrance. Then another. Bang! A man collapsed against the glass doors, smearing blood across them. His clothes were torn, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. He pounded weakly with his fist before sliding down. Ethan rushed forward and unlatched the door. The man stumbled inside, gasping. They're coming," his body convulsed, and he collapsed. Mia knelt beside him. "Sir? Can you hear me?" His lips moved, but the words barely escaped. "The dead, they're walking." A guttural growl echoed from outside. Lisa gasped. "Oh my God." They turned to the glass doors. Shadows moved beyond the streetlights, figures shuffling, their bodies stiff and unnatural. Then, one slammed against the glass. Another followed. Then another. The station was surrounded. Ethan pulled out his sidearm. "Lock the doors. Now." Lisa sprinted to secure the entrance, but then a woman screamed outside. A desperate mother banged on the doors, a young boy clutched in her arms. "Please. Let us in. They're coming." Behind her, the dead were closing in. Mia's eyes darted between Ethan and the woman. "Sergeant, we can't just leave them out there." Frank gritted his teeth. "We open that door, they'll flood in." Outside, the woman sobbed. "Please." The boy clung to her, his face buried in her shoulder. The first zombie reached her, fingers grasping at her hair. Ethan had 1 second to decide. Ethan's jaw tightened. He could see the pure terror in the woman's eyes as the undead closed in. "Open the door," he ordered. Mia didn't hesitate. She unlatched the entrance just enough to pull the woman and her son inside. The second they stumbled through, a decayed arm shot between the gap. "Shit!" Mia yelped, slamming her body against the door to push it shut. Frank rushed in, shoving his shoulder against it. The creature outside snarled, its blackened fingers clawing at the air. The door inched forward, almost closed. Then, the glass cracked. A web of fractures spread from the impact point where another zombie had thrown itself against the entrance. The others followed suit, their bodies slamming into the station like a relentless wave. "Reinforce the door now," Ethan barked. Lisa grabbed a metal chair and jammed it against the handle while Ethan and Frank shoved a nearby filing cabinet against the entrance. The glass groaned under the pressure, but for now, it held. Panting, Mia turned to the woman they had just saved. She was clutching her child, trembling. The boy buried his face in her chest, silent. Lisa approached cautiously. "Are either of you hurt?" The woman shook her head quickly, but there was something in her eyes, fear, hesitation. Ethan caught it. "Ma'am, we need to know if you've been bitten." "No. No, we're fine," she said too quickly. Ethan stared at her for a moment but let it slide. "What's your name?" "Elena. And this is my son, Oliver." Mia crouched down, offering a small smile to Oliver. "Hey, buddy. You okay?" The boy didn't respond. He just clung tighter to his mother, his little fingers digging into her sweater. Ethan glanced at Lisa. "Any word from dispatch?" She shook her head, frustration written all over her face. "Phones are down. No response on the radio either. Whatever's happening, it's everywhere." Frank cursed under his breath. "So, we're on our own." A sudden crash from the back of the station made everyone spin around. "That was a window," Lisa whispered. Ethan swore. The front entrance wasn't their only problem. If the zombies had reached the back of the building, they might already be inside. He grabbed his shotgun from the rack. "Mia, Frank, with me. Lisa, stay here with Elena and Oliver." They moved fast, stepping through the dimly lit hallway toward the rear entrance. The emergency lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows along the walls. A cool breeze drifted through the corridor. The window was broken. Mia's breath hitched as she saw it, glass littered the floor, and cold air seeped into the hallway. A bloodied handprint smeared the wall beside it. "Shit," Frank muttered. "They're inside." Ethan raised his shotgun, stepping forward cautiously. "Stay close." The station was deathly silent except for the distant sound of undead fists pounding against the front door. Mia's grip tightened around her pistol. "Where are they?" As if in response, a low, gurgling growl echoed from the shadows. Then, something moved. A figure lurched out from the darkness of an open cell. Pale skin. Torn uniform. Clouded eyes. Officer Reynolds. Or at least, what was left of him. Half of his face had been torn away, his jaw hanging loosely as he let out a guttural snarl. Frank cursed, stepping back. "Oh, hell no." Reynolds lunged. BLAM. Ethan fired, the shotgun blast tearing through the former officer's chest. Reynolds staggered but didn't go down. His head snapped toward them, blood dribbling from his ruined mouth. Mia fired twice, one shot missing, the second striking him in the skull. Reynolds collapsed in a heap. Silence returned. Mia's hands shook slightly as she lowered her gun. "That was Officer Reynolds," she murmured. "Not anymore," Frank said grimly. Ethan exhaled sharply. "We need to check the rest of the station. If one got in, there might be more." Frank nudged Reynolds' body with his boot. "What I want to know is, how the hell did he turn? He wasn't outside." Mia swallowed. "Maybe he got bitten earlier." Or, her eyes flickered toward the broken window. "Maybe he let them in." A chill ran through Ethan. A sudden, strangled scream made them spin around. It came from the main lobby. "Lisa!" Mia bolted down the hallway, Ethan and Frank right behind her. As they burst back into the front room, their stomachs dropped. The barricade was shaking violently. The creatures outside were relentless, slamming against the weakened doors. But that wasn't what made Lisa scream. She was standing near the front desk, eyes wide in horror. Elena was kneeling on the floor, holding Oliver tightly as the boy convulsed in her arms. His little body was jerking, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Tears streamed down Elena's face. "No, no, baby, stay with me," she sobbed. Ethan's heart pounded. "What happened?" Lisa's voice trembled. "He's been bitten." Elena clutched her son, shaking her head frantically. "Please, you have to help him. He's just a boy." Ethan's stomach clenched. The kid was already turning. They'd seen it happen with Reynolds. Mia took a step back, panic flashing in her eyes. Frank's jaw tightened. He reached for his gun. "We have to put him down." Elena screamed, shielding Oliver's body with her own. No! The barricade groaned loudly. The front doors weren't going to hold much longer. The station was about to be overrun. And they were out of time. Ethan's finger twitched near the trigger of his shotgun. The entire room had frozen, except for the dying boy in Elena's arms. His tiny body convulsed, spasms racking his frame. His breaths were shallow, ragged. His skin had gone deathly pale. "Please," Elena sobbed, her eyes wild. "He's my son. There has to be something you can do." Ethan clenched his jaw. He knew the truth, even if she refused to see it. Oliver was as good as gone. Frank, his gun raised, took a step forward. "Sergeant, we put him down now, or he turns and takes a bite out of one of us." "No!" Elena shrieked, curling around her child, shielding him from the barrel of Frank's pistol. "You're not killing my son." The barricade behind them shuddered violently. A deep, guttural groan vibrated through the air. "The front door isn't going to hold much longer." Mia hesitated, sweat beading on her forehead. "Ethan, what do we do?" Elena sobbed harder, cradling Oliver's twitching body. "Please, just give him time." "Time?" Ethan swallowed. Time wasn't on their side. But executing a child in front of his mother. His grip on the shotgun tightened. Lisa took a shaky breath. "Maybe there's another way." Frank scoffed. "Another way? Are you blind? That kid is dead." Lisa ignored him and turned to Ethan. "The holding cells," she said. "We lock them inside. If he turns, at least he won't be able to hurt anyone." Elena's head shot up, her eyes full of desperate hope. "Yes. Please, please, I'll stay with him. Just don't kill my baby." Frank shook his head in disgust. "We're wasting time. This is stupid." Ethan ignored him. His gaze flicked to the barricade, where the reinforced glass had begun to bow inward. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before the undead broke through. "We lock them up," he decided. Frank cursed under his breath, but Ethan was already moving. He grabbed Oliver's limp body from Elena's shaking arms and rushed toward the holding cells. The back of the station was eerily silent as they entered the holding area. Empty cells lined both sides of the hallway, their metal doors hanging open. Ethan stepped inside the nearest one, gently placing Oliver on the cot. Elena rushed in after him, kneeling beside her son, gripping his tiny hand. "We'll come back," Ethan told her. He wasn't sure if it was a lie. She nodded frantically. Mia hesitated at the cell door. "Are we sure about this?" "No," Ethan muttered. Then, he shut the heavy steel door, locking Elena and Oliver inside. A sharp gasp made them turn. Lisa had gone pale, staring down the hall. "What?" Ethan asked. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. "We're not alone." The words sent ice through his veins. He turned his head slowly. A dark figure stood at the far end of the hallway. The emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows over the person's face. It was a man. His uniform was torn, his badge glinting faintly under the dim light. Ethan's stomach twisted. Another officer. But something was wrong. The man's breathing was ragged. His arms hung limply at his sides. Blood dripped from his fingertips. Frank stepped forward, his gun raised. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" The figure twitched. Then, slowly, he lifted his head. Ethan's stomach dropped. His eyes. They were empty. Not clouded over like the undead outside. Not crazed like a man in shock. Just, empty. Then, in a voice that made Ethan's blood run cold, the man rasped. "You shouldn't have let them in." Mia took a step back. What the hell? The officer, if that's what he still was, tilted his head unnaturally. Then, he moved. Fast. Before anyone could react, he lunged, an unnatural blur of motion. Frank fired. The shot tore into the man's shoulder, but he barely flinched. Ethan barely had time to bring up his shotgun before the figure vanished. 1 second, he was there, charging them. The next, he was gone. What the hell was that? Lisa gasped, her eyes wide with horror. Frank spun, scanning the hallway, his gun shaking in his grip. Where did he go? Mia's breathing turned shallow. This isn't normal. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. The undead were slow. Clumsy. This was something else. A deep, echoing laugh filled the hallway. It was distorted, unnatural. Ethan turned sharply, shotgun raised. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Lisa clutched her radio, her voice trembling. We need to get out of here. Frank swallowed hard. Now I agree with you. A new sound made them all freeze. A soft, wet crackling noise. Ethan turned his head, toward the holding cell. Oliver's tiny body was still. Elena, still holding his hand, hadn't noticed. But Ethan had. Oliver's fingers twitched. His little head jerked, his neck snapping unnaturally. Then, the boy's eyes snapped open. Pitch black. Empty. A deep, hollow growl rumbled from his small throat. Ethan stepped back, dread curling in his gut. Elena, he whispered. Get away from him. She turned, confused. Wah. Oliver moved. His tiny hands latched onto her arm. And then he bit down. Elena screamed. And the whole station exploded into chaos. Elena's scream tore through the station. She thrashed, trying to rip her arm free, but Oliver's tiny jaws clamped down harder. Blood spilled from the wound, dripping onto the cell floor. Mia fumbled for the keys. We have to get her out of there. Ethan grabbed her wrist. No. Mia turned to him, eyes wild. We can't just. Ethan shook his head, his face grim. It's too late. Inside the cell, Elena's struggles weakened. Her breaths turned sharp, uneven. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she gazed at her son, her baby boy, whose small mouth was still filled with her flesh. Oliver, she choked out, her voice breaking. Sweetheart, please. But the child she loved was gone. Oliver released his grip, a deep, unnatural snarl rumbling from his throat. He lifted his head, his blood-stained mouth curling into something that almost looked like a smile. Then, he lunged. Elena's scream was cut short. Ethan turned away as the sickening sounds of tearing flesh filled the room. Mia clamped a hand over her mouth, horror freezing her in place. Lisa let out a shaky breath. She's gone. Frank swallowed hard. We need to move. Now. A loud crash came from the front of the station. The barricade was down. Ethan's stomach twisted. They're inside. Lisa's radio crackled. Repeat, if anyone is out there, respond. She fumbled for the receiver. Hello? Hello, we're trapped inside the station. Who is this? Static. Then, Officer Carter? This is Deputy Hall. I'm at the water treatment plant, about 2 miles east. I have survivors. Lisa's face lit up. There are others? Yes, but we're running low on supplies. If you can make it here, we can hold out together. Mia's eyes widened. That's our way out. Frank pointed at the front of the station. How the hell do you expect us to get through that? The main lobby was swarming with the undead. Dozens of rotting bodies staggered inside, their milky eyes locking onto their next meal. And then, a deep, rasping laugh echoed through the station. Mia stiffened. That's him. The thing they'd seen in the hallway. The one that moved too fast. Ethan's grip on his shotgun tightened. Back exit, he said. Now. They turned and ran. As they bolted through the station, the overhead lights flickered. Shadows stretched across the walls, twisting unnaturally. Mia's breath came in quick gasps. It's like it's playing with us. Frank reloaded his pistol, his hands shaking. I don't care what it is. If it bleeds, I can kill it. A low growl rumbled from ahead. They skidded to a stop. A figure stood in the hallway, blocking their path. The officer. The thing. His head tilted at an unnatural angle, his blank eyes locked onto them. And then, he smiled. It wasn't human. Ethan raised his shotgun. Move. The thing didn't. It just lifted one blood-stained hand, slowly, deliberately, pointing toward the ceiling. Ethan's heart pounded. What the hell is he doing? Frank whispered. A moment later, the lights cut out completely. Darkness swallowed them. Lisa gasped. I can't see. Then, something rushed past them. Mia screamed. A shot rang out, Frank's gun. Ethan swung the shotgun toward the movement, firing blind. The muzzle flash illuminated the hallway for a split second. The thing was right there. Mia vanished into the darkness. Mia! Ethan shouted. A second later, she hit the floor, coughing, gasping. Ethan rushed to her, grabbing her arm. Did it bite you? She shook her head frantically. No, I don't know what happened. Frank grabbed Ethan's shoulder. We have to go. Now. Ethan didn't argue. They stumbled toward the back exit, the sound of shuffling feet and guttural growls growing closer behind them. Lisa slammed into the door first, gripping the handle. It didn't budge. No, she gasped. It's locked. Ethan grabbed the keyring from his belt, his fingers shaking as he tried to find the right one. Frank turned, his gun aimed down the hallway. We don't have time for this. Mia pounded on the door. Come on. Ethan jammed a key into the lock. Click. The door swung open. They stumbled out into the freezing night air, slamming it shut behind them. Panting, they turned. And froze. The back alley was crawling with more undead. Dozens of them. Lisa whispered, We're trapped. A deep, rasping chuckle drifted from the shadows. They all turned. The officer stood at the edge of the alley, his hollow eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Then, he spoke. You can run. His lips curled into a sinister grin. But you can't hide. Ethan's pulse thundered. There was no way out. And the hunt had only just begun. The alley reeked of rot. Blood-stained pavement stretched ahead, flanked by towering brick walls. The only way forward was blocked by the undead, dozens of them. And behind them stood him. The officer. The thing. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark, his twisted smile sending a shiver down Ethan's spine. You can run, the officer rasped, voice dripping with something wrong. But you can't hide. Lisa gripped her pistol. What the hell is he? Ethan didn't have an answer. Frank fired first. A clean shot, dead center in the officer's chest. The thing barely flinched. Instead, it tilted its head, almost mockingly. Frank fired again. This time, the officer moved. Too fast. 1 second, he was standing still. The next, he was gone. Where did he go? Mia gasped. A whisper brushed against Ethan's ear. Behind you. Cold terror gripped his spine. He whirled around. The officer was right there. Ethan barely had time to react before he was slammed backward. His body hit the alley wall, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. Frank spun, unloading the rest of his clip. Bang, bang, bang. Nothing. The officer vanished again. Mia grabbed Ethan's arm, hauling him to his feet. We need to go. Now. The undead were closing in. Lisa scanned the alley frantically. There, fire escape. A rusted metal ladder clung to the side of the station, leading up to the roof. Ethan didn't think, he just ran. Lisa jumped first, gripping the ladder and scrambling upward. Mia went next, struggling to pull herself up. Frank turned, covering their backs. Go. I'll hold them off. Ethan reached the ladder, climbing up just as Mia got to the rooftop. Frank, come on. Lisa shouted from above. But Frank wasn't moving. He stood his ground, gun raised, teeth clenched. The undead were almost on him. And then. The officer stepped forward. Frank aimed directly at his head. I don't care what you are, he growled. You're dead. He pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. The officer grinned. Then, he lunged. Frank barely had time to scream before the thing was on him. Blood splattered across the alley wall. Mia choked on a sob. Frank. Go. Ethan shouted. They had no choice. Lisa reached the top, pulling herself onto the roof. Mia followed, and Ethan climbed up last, panting. They collapsed against the rooftop, shaking. Frank was gone. And the officer. Ethan swallowed hard, staring down into the alley. The thing was staring up at him. Smiling. Ethan's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a mindless zombie. It was something else. Something worse. And it was hunting them. The rooftop stretched ahead, offering a temporary reprieve from the chaos below. Lisa wiped her face, her hands shaking. We have to keep moving. Mia sniffled, hugging her arms. Frank, he didn't deserve that. Ethan clenched his jaw. None of us do. They couldn't mourn him. Not yet. Survival came first. Lisa pulled out the radio. Deputy Hall? Do you copy? Static. She tried again. Hall, do you hear me? We're coming to you. More static. Then, Carter? You're still alive? Lisa exhaled sharply. Barely. We lost one. We're on the rooftops, heading east. Get here fast. We've got a problem. Ethan narrowed his eyes. What kind of problem? They're changing. The three of them exchanged nervous glances. Lisa pressed the radio closer. What do you mean? Hall's voice was grim. I mean, some of them aren't slow anymore. Some of them are fast. Smart. We don't know how or why, but they're not acting like the rest. Ethan's stomach sank. They already knew. Lisa's grip on the radio tightened. We ran into one. Hall cursed under his breath. Then you understand. Get here, fast. Before more show up. The radio cut out. Mia shuddered. So there's more than one. Ethan nodded grimly. Looks like it. Lisa glanced at the horizon. The sky was still dark, but the faintest hint of dawn crept over the city. We don't have much time before sunrise. Mia frowned. Why does that matter? Lisa hesitated. Then, she whispered, because what if they get stronger at night? The idea sent a cold shiver through all of them. Ethan took a deep breath. Then we move. Now. They crossed the rooftop, heading toward the water treatment plant. The city stretched before them, burning, broken. The world they knew was gone. And something new was rising from the ashes. Something smarter. Something deadlier. And it was watching them. From the alley below, unseen eyes followed their every move. Then, a deep chuckle echoed through the night. The hunt had truly begun. The rooftops provided a brief sense of safety, but Ethan knew it wouldn't last. The officer, that thing, was still out there. Watching. Hunting. Lisa led the way, hopping across a narrow gap between two buildings. Mia hesitated, her legs trembling as she looked down at the alley below. "We don't have time for this," Ethan urged. "You can do it." Mia swallowed hard, took a deep breath, then jumped. She barely made it, her foot slipping at the last second. Ethan lunged, grabbing her wrist and hauling her up. "Got you." Mia panted, nodding. "Thanks." Lisa's radio crackled again. "Carter?" Lisa pressed the button. "We're still moving." "What's going on?" Hall's voice came through, strained. "Something's wrong." "We." A loud crash. A scream. Then, silence. Lisa's face paled. Mia's breath hitched. "Oh my God." Ethan clenched his jaw. "We keep going. Fast." They sprinted across the rooftops, jumping gaps, ducking under metal pipes. The city was eerily quiet, no sirens, no honking cars. Just the distant moans of the undead below. They reached the edge of a building. The water treatment plant loomed in the distance, just across a stretch of abandoned streets. Lisa grimaced. "We have to go down." Mia shook her head. "No. No way. He's down there. I can feel it." Ethan scanned the area. They couldn't stay up here. They had to reach Hall's group, if they were still alive. There, he pointed. A fire escape led down into a narrow alley. No zombies in sight. Lisa nodded. "We move fast. No noise." One by one, they climbed down. The moment Ethan's feet hit the pavement, something shifted in the darkness. A whisper. A scrape. Mia flinched. "Did you hear that?" Lisa raised her pistol, eyes scanning the alley. Nothing. The three of them crept forward, their footsteps barely making a sound. The plant was just a few blocks away. If they could just. A metal trash can clattered behind them. They froze. Lisa whipped around, gun raised. "Show yourself." A slow, deliberate chuckle drifted from the shadows. Ethan's stomach clenched. Then, a voice. "You're getting close." It was him. The officer stepped forward, his silhouette barely visible in the dim light. His uniform was still mostly intact, except for the dark stains of dried blood. Mia took a step back, her hands trembling. "What do you want?" The officer tilted his head, like a predator studying its prey. "To see how long you can last." Ethan's pulse hammered. He wasn't a normal zombie. He thought. He planned. And he was enjoying this. Lisa fired. The bullet whizzed through the air. And the officer moved. 1 second, he was standing in front of them. The next, he was gone. A breath brushed against Ethan's ear. Too slow. Ethan whipped around and swung the butt of his shotgun. But there was nothing there. Lisa's radio crackled. A weak voice, "Help." Lisa's eyes widened. Hall? Static. Then, they're inside. A loud crash. Ethan cursed. "We have to move." Lisa hesitated, her hands clenched into fists. "He's toying with us." Mia's eyes darted around, panic setting in. We're running out of time. The officer's voice drifted from the darkness. Tick, tock. Lisa grabbed Ethan's arm. Go. They ran. Through the streets, dodging abandoned cars, stepping over corpses that had been ripped apart. The water treatment plant loomed ahead, its entrance gate wide open. Ethan skidded to a stop, heart pounding. That's not good. Lisa grabbed her radio. Hall? We're here. Where are you? Silence. Then. Inside. The voice was wrong. It sounded distorted. Mocking. Ethan took a step back. That's not Hall. A scream erupted from inside. Mia flinched. We can't go in there. Lisa's grip tightened on her gun. We don't have a choice. They stepped inside. The plant was massive, dark corridors, pipes stretching overhead, the air thick with dampness. Blood smeared the walls. Bodies littered the floor. And in the center of the room, a figure stood, half-slumped, barely breathing. Deputy Hall. Lisa ran forward. Hall. Ethan grabbed her shoulder. Wait. Hall's head lifted. His eyes were milky white. His mouth twisted into a grin. Then, in a voice that wasn't his own, he rasped. You're too late. The lights flickered. And the real nightmare began. The air inside the water treatment plant was thick with decay. Blood pooled across the tiled floor, reflecting the flickering emergency lights overhead. Deputy Hall stood in the center, body slack, head tilted slightly. His lips curled into a grotesque smile. Lisa took a cautious step forward, her gun trembling in her grip. Hall. His milky white eyes twitched toward her, but there was nothing human left in them. His mouth opened. And another voice spoke. Not his. Not human. You should have run. A chill crawled up Ethan's spine. That's not him anymore. Hall lunged. Lisa barely had time to react before his body jerked unnaturally, his movements wrong, too fast, too erratic. He closed the distance in seconds. Lisa fired, bang. The shot hit him square in the chest. Hall didn't stop. He slammed into her, knocking her to the ground. Ethan grabbed his shotgun, swinging the butt like a club, whack. Hall's head snapped back, but he didn't collapse. Instead, he laughed. The sound was inhuman. Mia screamed, raising her knife. Hall's arm shot out and grabbed her wrist in a bone-crushing grip. His head jerked toward her, his expression twisting. Mia struggled, eyes wide with terror. Let go, let go. Ethan acted on instinct. He cocked his shotgun and fired. The blast ripped through Hall's head, sending him crashing to the ground. For a second, nobody moved. The body twitched. Then went still. Mia stumbled back, gasping for air. Lisa pushed herself up, her hands shaking. What the hell was that? Ethan swallowed hard. That was something worse. Lisa lifted her radio, trying to steady her breathing. Hall's dead. Again. Silence. Then, a familiar voice. You're running out of time. Ethan's blood ran cold. It was him. The officer. Lisa's grip on the radio tightened. Where are you? A chuckle drifted through the static. Closer than you think. The lights flickered again. Then, a low groaning filled the air. Mia turned, eyes widening. From the far end of the plant, they came. Zombies. Dozens. Shambling from the dark corridors. Crawling over pipes. Climbing through broken windows. They were surrounded. Lisa cursed. We need to move, now. Ethan spotted an exit sign. This way. They sprinted down the hallway, their footsteps echoing. Behind them, the horde descended. The undead swarmed over Hall's corpse, tearing into it, their hungry moans filling the building. Ethan kicked open a maintenance door, leading them into another corridor filled with massive pipes and flickering lights. They ran through the steam-filled maze, ducking under rusted metal beams. Lisa glanced over her shoulder. They're gaining on us. Ethan spotted a heavy metal door ahead. There, go. Mia shoved the door open, the group rushing inside. Ethan slammed it shut behind them, twisting the lock. The door rattled violently as the undead crashed against it. Mia doubled over, gasping. We're trapped. What do we do now? Lisa wiped sweat from her forehead, eyes scanning the room. There has to be another way out. Ethan turned. And his stomach dropped. There, at the far end of the room, standing completely still in the shadows, was him. The officer. Waiting. Watching. A slow grin spread across his blood-stained lips. Lisa raised her gun. Stay back. The officer didn't move. Instead, he spoke. You're all trying so hard. His voice was calm. You still think you can win? Mia's voice trembled. What do you want? His grin widened. To see you break. Lisa fired. The bullet ripped through his chest. But he didn't fall. He laughed. Then, he moved. Too fast. Before anyone could react, he was right in front of them. Lisa swung her gun, he caught it midair and shoved her back. She slammed against the wall with a sickening crack. Ethan raised his shotgun. But the officer's hand snapped forward like lightning, grabbing the barrel. With an unnatural strength, he ripped it from Ethan's grasp and tossed it aside. Ethan barely had time to register the movement before the officer's fist smashed into his stomach. Pain exploded through his ribs as he crashed to the ground, gasping for air. Mia lunged with her knife. The officer caught her wrist and twisted. Mia screamed, the blade clattering to the floor. The officer leaned in close, his breath ice-cold against her skin. You don't understand, he murmured. His grip tightened. I don't need to kill you. He let her go. Mia collapsed, clutching her wrist, tears streaming down her face. The officer straightened, looking down at them. You're going to wish I had. Then. The lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed the room. And in that moment, Ethan knew. They weren't getting out of this unscathed. Darkness swallowed the room. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. His breath came in sharp gasps. Somewhere in the black void, he heard Lisa groaning, Mia whimpering, and the slow, steady breathing of the thing wearing a police uniform. Then. A whisper. Right next to his ear. Run. The lights flickered back on. The officer was gone. The door behind them burst open as the horde crashed through. Zombies flooded in, moaning, their decomposing hands stretching forward. Move! Ethan shouted. Lisa shoved herself off the wall, still dazed. Mia scrambled to her feet, eyes wide with panic. They sprinted through the room, dodging pipes and equipment. A maintenance door loomed ahead. Ethan grabbed the handle, locked. Help me, he yelled. Lisa and Mia threw their weight against it. The door groaned but didn't budge. Zombies swarmed closer. Lisa fired into the mass of bodies, dropping two, but more kept coming. Mia grabbed a metal wrench from a nearby toolbox and smashed it against the door handle. Once. Twice. The lock snapped. They shoved the door open and barreled through, slamming it behind them. A stairwell. Lisa gasped for breath. Where does this go? Mia scanned the signs. There's a maintenance exit. Downstairs. Ethan hesitated. Something was wrong. Where is he? Lisa shook her head. We don't have time to think about him. The radio crackled. A voice. Low. Amused. Downstairs? Ethan's stomach dropped. He grabbed Mia's arm. Wait. Too late. Mia had already started down the steps. And the door at the bottom flew open. A hand, inhumanly fast, snatched her wrist. She screamed. Lisa fired. The bullet whizzed down the stairwell. The officer yanked Mia forward, using her as a shield. The shot slammed into the concrete wall. Ethan lunged, too slow. The officer pulled Mia into the darkness below. Mia! Ethan bellowed, bolting down the steps. Lisa followed, reloading as she ran. The lower level was pitch black. A faint drip, drip, drip of water echoed through the halls. Ethan's eyes adjusted. Ahead, in the dim light. Mia. Standing completely still. Alone. Lisa raised her gun. Mia? No answer. Ethan approached cautiously. Mia, are you? She turned. Her face was blank. Eyes hollow. Then, in a whisper, not her voice, she murmured. He's inside. Ethan's breath caught. Lisa took a step back. No. Mia's head twitched. Her lips curled into a slow smile. I see everything now. Ethan clenched his fists. Fight it, Mia. Mia's smile widened. Why fight? When you can. She lunged. Lisa barely dodged as Mia swiped at her with claw-like fingers. Ethan didn't hesitate, he grabbed Mia, struggling to hold her back. Mia, it's us. She thrashed, inhumanly strong. Lisa raised her gun, hesitated. I can't. Mia's head snapped toward Lisa. Then. She stopped. Her body shuddered. Her face twisted in pain. She gasped, her own voice returning. Ethan. Ethan tightened his grip. I'm here. Tears streamed down her face. He's still in me. Lisa's radio crackled. The officer's voice. Disappointed. Almost had her. Mia screamed, grabbing her head as if trying to tear him out. Lisa clenched her jaw. We end this. Ethan looked at the door ahead. Come on. They dragged Mia through, bursting into a large industrial room. Pipes hissed with steam. Massive turbines loomed overhead. And standing in the center. The officer. Waiting. Lisa raised her gun. No more games. The officer tilted his head. Games? This was a lesson. Ethan clenched his fists. Shut up. The officer took a slow step forward. You felt it, haven't you? His gaze flicked to Mia. She's changing. Mia trembled. I won't. The officer smirked. You already are. Ethan lunged. The officer dodged effortlessly. Lisa fired, bang. The bullet tore through his skull. He staggered. Then laughed. Lisa's face twisted in horror. What the hell does it take? Mia, still shaking, looked up. Then. Her eyes locked onto a massive pressure valve near the turbines. She understood. Mia grabbed Lisa's gun. Before anyone could react. She turned. Aimed. And fired. The bullet slammed into the pressure valve. Steam erupted from the pipes. The officer jerked back, hissing in pain. The room rumbled. The turbine overloaded. Ethan grabbed Mia and Lisa. Go. They ran. Behind them. Boom! The explosion ripped through the plant, sending metal shrapnel flying. The officer's scream was lost in the roar of fire. They burst through the exit door just as the facility collapsed. The ground trembled. Smoke and fire rose into the night. Silence followed. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then, Mia exhaled. "Is it over?" Lisa didn't answer. Ethan watched the flames. Somewhere in the wreckage. He thought he heard laughter. End of part 8.